What's up, my good peoples? Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast, where we're talking about ideas that stimulate wholesome thinking unto identity, purpose, vision, and action. I am James Anderson, and with me is Logan Eaton and Kyle Entman. My good bros, what's cracking?
Hello. What's cracking, James? Good to be back.
Good to be back.
Yeah, where were you? Tell the listeners.
Oh, I got
South of Peru this
sidetracked.
time?
Yeah, I got sidetracked last week. I was after work. I had to go a couple places, run a couple errands, and I was about 30 minutes away. So.
Don't lie, you really just ate a big thing of cheesecake.
Well, I did eat ice cream. I did. I went to go get ice cream and you were calling, and I was like,
That's what you were doing?
I was going to get ice cream. I did, and I got it. And like you were calling when I was in the ice cream store. It was in Waterbury, Mr. Freeze or whatever.
Yeah, and by this
And then
point,
we're
you were
talking-
supposed to already be here.
You were
Yeah.
telling us, like, yeah, I got to work late.
Yeah. I did. I had.
But you were at the ice cream store?
I had to do something legitimate, but I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go.
I'm gonna
out.
have some ice cream.
And then I just slammed it and went home and
Fell asleep?
It was not the best sleep. Let's just say that. Don't try to eat ice cream before you go to bed.
Old ice cream.
At least all the sugar, but it was a nice.
What flavor did you get, at least?
I got a caramel sundae.
Mm.
Yeah, it was good. Good. But yeah.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I was coming. I was gonna come out, but you called and I was like, all right. I'll do it.
You were too busy
The
at
ice
the
cream
ice
is
cream
spoken.
store in line.
Yeah, it was a decent line, but they had quite a few people working, so I was able to get in pretty quick. And I asked for it, and like 2 seconds later, they brought it to me. They're like, "Here you go." I was like, "Wow, that was quick."
That was quick.
Yeah, but it went pretty well without me, huh?
Yeah.
Good,
Mhm.
good stuff.
Absolutely.
Fiery conversation topic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was explosive.
explosive. Good. You didn't have to change yourself too many times, did you? Alright. Okay.
It wasn't taco night.
Yes, the first 3
Does it?
times. It wasn't taco.
Yeah.
Never eating tacos
It wasn't burrito night.
again.
You
Burritos.
gotta
Jimmy
smoke a
Jack.
cigar sometime too.
Whoa.
Yeah. Like the good old days.
Like the good
But what
old
was
days.
what'd you guys talk about last week? Briefly.
Listen to it. Jeez.
All right, I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
What did we talk about? We talked about how the kingdom of heaven is like yeast.
Cool.
Influence.
Cool.
How you should have some. And tonight, we're talking about substance.
Substance.
Yeah. Not abuse.
Okay.
But
All right.
more like substance as in like matter.
Okay.
Yeah, just looking
matter.
looking at some of these stories and miracles that took place and how they didn't just appear out of thin air. There's quite a few stories where things were transformed or something small was turned into abundance, but it was all made from something that existed. And so the idea is that sometimes, there can be a tendency to kind of take ourselves out of the equation of like, maybe I've got a money problem, I got a problem with my finance, I got a problem with this relationship, I got this problem at work, but I'll just pray about it and God will take care of it. It'll just magically disappear kind of concept. And not saying that can't totally happen, but there's this definite reality that God created us on purpose. And he doesn't have to create something out of thin air because he has us. So this is kind of the concept we're looking at tonight. And so the first story, we're going to look at a few stories here. The first one we're going to look at is when Jesus turned water into wine, which is interesting because this, John said, was the first miracle he did. So let me just read this bad boy for us here. It says, this is John 2, 1 through 11. It says, on the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washings, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water so they are filled to the brim." Then he told them, No. Jesus said, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servant who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have too much to drink. But you've saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. It's interesting that they said that this was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory. The what you call it, like the intro, the opening night, the opening act to display his glory was turning water into wine. It wasn't healing sick, it wasn't raising the dead, it wasn't casting out the demons, there's a party going on and everybody drank all the wine. And Jesus turns this water into wine. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. But so what's the other thing that's interesting, though, is that Jesus told them to fill the jars with water, right? Like Jesus didn't just make the wine appear in those big jars. He said fill it with water, and then he transformed the water into wine. And it's just that concept where he used substance and then transformed what was there. So if you think about like when Jesus fed the 4,000 or the 5,000, right? They had bread and they had a few fish, and it was with what they had, just the little that they had, that then went a long way, to the point where maybe they only had 2 baskets, and then they fed all these people and then had, baskets fulls left over. But just kind of this concept of with just a little bit, God can take that and do something crazy with it. When Jesus and Peter got confronted about the temple tax, Jesus told Peter, "Hey, go fishing. First fish you catch will have a coin in its mouth, and then we can pay our temple tax." Right? Like he didn't just make the coin appear. Like Peter had to go fish, catch it, unhook it, grab the, like the fish went and ate a coin at the bottom.
In the fish.
Right. Was it in its mouth or was it like in its like way back there?
He's got this fish all the way out of the bag, flopping around.
Oh my.
Where is that?
Telling people there's a coin down here somewhere.
That guy's got his arm down a fish's mouth.
I'm getting money.
No, I put it in here somewhere. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
But he used the substance.
That's a big fish.
Well, it was after that, yeah.
Yeah, it was a dinero or something like that, huh?
You're a dinero.
It's a dinero.
Robert?
Right.
Daenerys?
Microwave
Daenerys? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was some
wanted
kind
to
of
find
money,
it.
though? It was a coin, right?
Some kind
Yeah,
of
pay for
some
taxes.
kind of monetary.
Because he said, let the government have what is theirs.
Yeah, let Caesar have what's Caesar's.
So he's pretty
Dang.
chill about
Give
it.
to God what's God's.
Wow.
Yeah. That's sweet. It's pretty prophetic. Prothetic.
Yeah, pro and po. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
But yeah.
Heck of a story.
Substance. Which one?
Substance.
The fish one? Yeah. Yeah. Substance. So there's another story, right? With Elijah. Elijah, this one's interesting. This is in 1 Kings. So Elijah calls for a drought. And bam, there is then a drought. Oh my gosh, hold on a second. Yeah, so anyways, he calls for a drought, and God tells him, all right, go to the Kidron Valley, and sorry, I'm trying to find this thing. Anyways, he says, go to the Kidron Valley. I'm gonna tell these ravens to to bring you food during the day, and then you're gonna drink from the brook that's there. So he does. These birds bring him food, and he just drinks water from the brook. Well, some time goes by, and the brook dries up. So he says, all right, well, I'm going to send you to this widow, and I've commanded her to take care of you. So I couldn't find it. I think it's the widow.
What book is it in?
Yeah, who knows? Water and wine. I don't. For some reason, it's not on this. It's not on this telephone. We're having some technical difficulties here. Oh wait, boom. Yeah. So here it goes. 1 Kings 17. Come on, somebody. All right. So the brook dried up because there had been no rain, because he called for no rain. Then the word of the Lord came and says, go at once to this one place in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So when he went to Zarephath, when he came to the town gate, a widow there was gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, why? Oh, no, sorry. Would you bring me a little water in a jar that I may have a drink? So she was going to get it. Then he called out, and bring me, please, a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you said. But first, make me a small loaf of bread from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain in the land. So she went away and did as Elijah told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry. It kept in keeping with the word the Lord spoke to Elijah. This one's interesting. Because so God says, all right, I directed this widow to take care of you. It almost seemed like the woman didn't get she didn't get the email. nor did she have the supply, nor did she seemingly have the supplies, right? I mean, you talk about kind of living in reality, or kind of coming to terms with your circumstances. And she's like, look, man, I'm out here gathering sticks. I'm going to make the very last little bit of food that I can with this little tiny bit of flour, this little bit of all the oil that I have left. My son and I are going to eat it, and then we're going to die. Like, talk about hopelessness. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, nobody panic. He's like, go make me a piece of bread. Yeah, but just in a place of like death, like in an instant, it gets transformed into life. But what was interesting is that it was the miracle came from the substance that already existed, right? It was with the very last little bit that this woman had, was the very thing that just, it didn't run dry. And it's just this concept, one, that it's like, it doesn't have to be much for God to use it. And sometimes it doesn't have to be much, and it doesn't have to look like much. There's in Luke 17, the disciples, Jesus was teaching, and in response to some of that, the disciples are like, whoa, hey, man, increase our faith. He's like, man, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you could tell this mulberry tree to uproot itself and plant itself in the sea, and it would obey you. Right? And he just kind of keeps talking about this reality of faith, that the fact that all you need is a little bit. And he's like, and you're called to live in the supernatural. You're called to live in these miracles. And that should be normal. It's as normal as you would send a servant out to go work in the field, is as normal as I'm saying, hey, go heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out the demons, make disciples of all nations. Like, that's normal. And so it's like, it's just this concept with just a little bit, whatever you have is like, it's full of potential in terms of like what could be done with it. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Definitely interesting.
Yeah. 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 So, right. Well, going back to like what I was talking about earlier, or looking at visions and ideas, right? So, like, Logan, you have, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we want to create something big that's impactful, like, 1,000-acre farm or whatever, right?
Right.
But it's like sometimes even starting out with, we think the big thing, right? But starting out with 5 acres or whatever, something small, but getting yourself out there can be powerful in just planting that. And it might only take people see it and then they go, oh, wow, I like that idea. And that just gets transformed really quick. So I think if that's what you're saying, is it doesn't take, like you're saying, it's just putting it into practice. You don't have to worry about the big, huge, like how you're going to accomplish that huge picture, but putting things into practice, even if I think the word is seem small, or it's not going to amount to much if I just do this little bit, if I want to do what I want to do with kids and adolescents, even if I started on a small plot of land and seeing where it goes from there, because I think I was thinking, because in my head I can visualize something really big, but that's okay to just go smaller and see what potential is in that little, just like having a little apple seed, it's small. It's a small little thing, but it can get huge.
Yeah.
So that's where I go with that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What was the part that you said something about potential? How did you phrase that question?
I don't know.
Crap.
You really got to write these things down.
Yeah. About like
how you have some,
like how you act on it, or just seeing it. Oh yeah, I think I remember what you're saying. Like sometimes your potential, whatever you have, can be the potential that you need to turn into something. Like you don't have to have everything.
Yeah.
Like with the woman in the story, she just had a little bit, and it was enough.
Yeah.
And it was for massive things.
Yeah.
At least just to do what the purpose was that it had. The flour was there to make bread and the oil, and it did that over a massive scale for a long period of time, and it was enough. So, yeah. I think it's easy to get worried about not having enough, or not thinking you're in a bad situation to not be where you want to be, or I don't know, like if you got student debt, sometimes you might have a dream to go out and work somewhere or do something or start a business, but you've got the student debt and you think, well, I'm just not in a good spot to do it. But in reality, it's like, okay, that doesn't hold God back. That doesn't, it's manageable. All that stuff is manageable. And if you put a plan together, like if you actually, put the time in to create a plan or to figure out, okay, what do I got to do to manage this debt and to get out of it? Like that takes effort. If you can do that, I mean, it just starts to become, you can start doing things. And that's just, I guess it's just an example, but it's easy to just get worried about all that stuff and think you don't have enough, or think you're not in the right position to do this or do that, or you don't have enough, I don't know, you don't have enough experience, or you don't have enough education, or you don't have the right people, or I don't know. And it's just, it's easy to think that way. And that causes anxiety and frustration. And then you usually just crap out and get tired, and then you're back to where you don't want to be. So yeah, I think it's easy to get anxious about it, but yeah, I mean, and it doesn't take a lot of faith to just say, well, God's going to take care of it. It doesn't take really any faith just to say that. And I mean, it takes, I guess, a little bit of hope, but it takes more faith to be like, okay, this is going to require some accountability on me and responsibility on me. And if I'm going to take action, then God has to show up. Like, God has to show up here, because I'm going to put something at risk, whether it's my time, my money, my effort, my energy, whatever. I'm going to take effort and action. So God has to show up. It takes a lot more faith, I think, to do that than the faith to just say, well, God, I prayed and God's going to, give me this or something, or just depend on something showing up out of nothing. I don't know. It just doesn't take much faith to think that way. It takes more faith to say, I'm going to act on this, and something better happen.
Yeah.
Something's got to happen.
Yeah. Well, so the water and the wine, Jesus told the servants, right? So Mary tells Jesus, and Jesus is like, ah. He's like, sorry.
End quote.
That's the new street version. Yeah. Nah.
What y'all worried about?
Nah, dog. Yeah. So anyways, yeah. So Jesus tells the servants, "Hey, fill up the jars with water." And so I love it that it then says, then they filled it up to the brim. Right? So they're just doing what he said, but that took faith, right? And then he said, scoop out some of that liquid and take it to the host of the part. No, it wasn't the host, but it was like whoever like the most important person was. Take it to them. All right, that's risky. Who is this guy? We just filled these jugs up with water.
Wasn't it like wash water? Like people had maybe bathed in it?
I don't think so. I think it was just water. Well, they were ceremonial washing jars, so maybe they had been.
Or at least
but they filled them up, so I think they were empty.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but I don't know if they had Dawn back then. Right. Just rub some dirt in it. It's fine.
But the person they were taking it to probably had power. They probably had the power to like it.
Well, it's like that was like the most important person. And so they're scooping up this water that was once water and taking it. I mean, that's...
And saying it's wine.
Yeah. And then this guy's like, holy crap, right? Like, this stuff's legit.
It's good wine.
And with the widow and the son and Elijah, he says, first make me out of what you have left. She just said, I'm going to make this, eat it, and die. He said, first make me bread out of what you have, then make yourself some bread. Right? That order is like matters.
Right.
Because to offer up the very last that I have to some stranger who's like seemingly could care less that me and my son are about to die, right? To trust in that and take that action, that then brought about.
Yeah. Kind of like, I don't know, just thinking too, like with accomplishing your visions and dreams, right? Like first, there's certain things you have to do or would benefit you. If you want first getting some experience in an area, making those connections, learning, I don't know, other skills, all that stuff, then go out. And once you have a plan, then it's more solidified. Then you can, put more stuff into concrete action. That's what I kind of think of it like that, like taking care of those first things, because I think everyone wants to, invest and do it right now, and everyone wants it right now, but it's like sometimes what we want isn't the best, and it's like you second guess. She was probably like, you first, but I'm gonna. And she's like, all right. So something within her had to be like, so yeah. That's what I think of that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think a couple things you guys said were real important. And one of them was like, well, so you got this big vision, but then what does it look like to turn this idea into that big vision? And, you're talking about the apple seed. Well, that seed, one, it doesn't look like much when it starts out, right? There's the whole concept of potential. Like, it really doesn't look like much, but inside of that thing is epic abundance and overflow. And so you put that thing in the ground, and it takes time for it to sprout up out of the ground, create a leaf, create a stem, right? Turn into a tree, and then that then produces fruit. I mean, you're talking about some time. And so, kind of like you were talking about, like, you get these ideas that would actually solve your problem. It would get you going. Or it's like, or literally, like, sometimes I have an idea. I'm like, I've got a problem, or I've got an issue, or I got something I'm thinking about, and then I'll come up with an idea. This idea is actually a solution to the problem, but then I'll be like, nah. Like, I'll discount or discredit. Yeah. I'll say, I'll somehow just say, no, that's not going to work. And then I'm just left with my problem. I'm left in the same position because I came up with an idea, but then I was like, nah, that's not going to work. But then it's like, no, that was actually the solution.
Right. Or having people maybe suggest. For me, it's like people suggest things or tell me things, or try this or do this, and it's so easy. Oh no, why do that? Why do I need to do that? And I think sometimes I need to listen to all sorts of information coming because I don't know what's gonna be beneficial for me. Like, who knows who was it Elijah told the lady?
Yeah.
Who knows who the Elijah is, right? Put that in your water jug.
Come on, somebody. Yeah. So here we got another one, another jug story.
Oh, jeez.
But you're talking about shortages, right? This idea that there's shortages. And this one we're going to get into it. All right. So now, depending on what side of the Bronx you grew up on, I used to call this guy Alicia because it's spelled Alicia. Look, if they didn't want words to be sounded out, they wouldn't have given letters sounds.
Like vowels?
Yeah. Yes, whatever. Anyways, other people call it Elijah instead of Elijah. So Elijah was the guy we were just talking about, right? Who then runs into this guy Elijah or Alicia, if you're me. And and Alicia is the one, Elisha, whatever, is the one who gets like the second. He's like, I want 2 shares, whatever. What did he say? Oh, I want a double portion of your anointing. That's what he says to Elijah, who's taken up in a chariot of fire in a whirlwind. It's pretty epic. But anyways, so Elijah or Elisha, he has an encounter with a widow as well. And so here we are. We find ourselves in 2 Kings chapter 4. The wife of a man from the company of prophets cried out to Elijah, or Elisha. It says Elisha. Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But his creditor is coming to take my 2 sons as slaves. Elisha replied to her, how can I help you? Tell me, what is it that you have in your house? Your servant has nothing at all, she said, except a small jar of olive oil. Elisha said, go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside, shut the door behind you, you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars. As each is filled, put one to the side. She left him, shut the door behind her, and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her sons, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There's no jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt. You and your sons can live on the rest." So here's this woman, right? This widow. Her husband dies, but apparently had a decent-sized debt. So now the debt collector's coming to this woman saying, "Hey, I'm going to take your kids as they're going to be my slaves until you can pay off the debt." She's like, "Oh my gosh." So she goes to Elisha, and it's interesting, his approach. He's like, "Okay, how can I help you? What do you have?" Right? So what's the problem? The problem is that we need some money. Like, we owe a debt. So he's like, "All right, what do you have?" Right? In the sense of like, what do you have that we can sell? And she says, "Man, I don't have anything except and this is interesting that she would even say it, but she's like, "All I got is like this little tiny bit of oil. That's it. There's like nothing else of value." He's like, "Bam, we can use that." And so the story unfolds. But you think about like just even his approach, right? Because I don't know, somebody comes to you like that, maybe, he could have just been like, "All right, well, how much money do you owe? And let me go see if I can raise it or find it or whatever." Or maybe they could have got together with all their friends and be like, "Hey, we need this amount of money, otherwise they're going to take our kids," whatever. Or maybe they're like, maybe we could have negotiated with the debt collector. Or maybe they could have hired themselves out to work to be able to get the funds or whatever. But anyways, he doesn't do any of these things. He says, "What do you have?" She's like, "I just got this little bit of oil." He's like, "Perfect. Go and get some jars. But whatever you do, don't just get a few." Right? So again, we're talking about faith here. So her sons come, bring her some jars. They close the door behind her, and bam, they start pouring out of this little tiny jar, whatever. There's just a little bit of oil, and they start pouring into these jars. Bam, one jar full. Move it to the side. Another jar, fill it up. Full. Oh my gosh, give me another one. Full. Just out of this little tiny bit that didn't look like much came overflow abundance. Out of what she had that didn't look like much came everything she needed. But you think, now this story for me is like screams like potential. Because there was no shortage of oil. There was a shortage, if you want to call it that, in vessels, in jars, right? He says, don't just get a few, get all you can. Right? She's pouring. Give me another jar. Oh, we're out of jars. You're out of jars. The oil stops flowing. There was no limit to how much they could have filled up. The only limiting factor was the vessels that they had. So he says, go sell them, pay off your debt, and then you can live on the rest. And I'm not saying that she didn't get all that she could, but what if, after hearing that, you'd be like, "Freak, I wish we would have. Wish we would have taken the time to find a few more jobberdingles." Maybe they tried it again, but it didn't work. I don't know. Whatever. I'm not trying to I'm not saying they did anything wrong, but I'm just thinking, like, let's just say those vessels, right? That oil. Right, so this is the concept of shortages, right? So shortages. Like, is there such thing as shortages, right? Like, to your creativity, your ability to realize dreams and thoughts and action and energy, right? Are there shortages in these things? Well, I just don't have enough energy. Well, I just couldn't do that. Well, I'm not in the right position. Well, I've got all this debt. I've got this. I got that. Well, my dream's too big. I don't have all this money. Do you believe in shortages? So this little jar of oil that didn't look like much, right? We're talking about potential. This is the untapped, right? You get these ideas, right? They give you, they're giving you insight into what you're capable of. So we got this this person called the Holy Spirit who is connected in like the fiber of our beings and fuels us, right? Has unlimited power. But let's just say, so the Holy Spirit is the oil, right? The vessels is your belief in what it is that you're capable of. Because look, the only shortage there was how many vessels they had. But I mean, so when you think about potential, right, it's what you could do. It's not what you have done. It's what you could do. It's not what you've become. It's who you could become. It's the things you could get into. But what if your dreams, what if you only believe you could just do something small? You couldn't do the whole thing. Well, I've got this dream to have this big farm, but it's too big of a dream. Well, I just settle for something like this, or maybe I can't do that. Maybe I can't do all 10 of these ideas. I can only do one. What if, right? To the degree that you believe is to the degree that oil will flow. If that makes sense. Because there was that oil would have kept going. If they had another jug, there would have been more oil. If you had, and just in that concept is if you had a little more belief in what it is that you're capable of doing, that's kind of the difference between like what you'll actually realize and what you won't. But it's like, how do you view yourself? How valuable do you see yourself? How full of potential do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as somebody who matters? Or do you look at yourself and be like, man, I've got nothing. I've got nothing to offer. I've got nothing in my house. There's nothing to my name. There's nothing. Oh, what do you have? I just got this little tiny bit of oil. Does that make sense though? Like this concept of your beliefs or your belief in yourself and your capacity is kind of like that's the only area where you could come up with shortages, is kind of in your belief, not in what God's able to do, but kind of in what you believe is possible.
Like your self-perception.
Yeah.
Kind of. Like that's the jars.
Yeah.
Like a low self-perception or self-perception.
Yeah.
It only creates a little bit to be filled, but like a higher value of what you can bring or your potential or what you want to do creates more capacity to be filled up. Maybe is that what you're trying to?
Yeah.
Is that what am I getting that right?
You are.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
You have any thoughts?
Yeah, because it's easy to just have a low self-perception by a lot of teaching that says you need to. I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of things out there that can create a low self-perception. Thing like you're not prepared enough for this, especially like maybe parents that want you to have that want an individual to go to school for 6 years to be a doctor, so there's all this, but the individual wants to do something else, or so there's just all these teaching about you need to do this, you need to do this, you do this, and so the self-perception of wanting to go out and do something that the person actually wants to do just becomes lower and lower. I'll just settle for this or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's not a good example, but there's just a lot of stuff in the world that decreases our self-perception, I think. Whether it's whether it's in the church talking about sin and just focusing so much on the sinful nature, or whether it's like, you didn't go to college and since you didn't go to college, you really don't have enough education to do anything, big or great. Or it's like we let these human I don't know, like human laws almost dictate everything and dictate our self-perception. It's all man-made views, and we can buy into those, and it lowers our self-perception and kind of limits us, I think. I don't know. That's what I've kind of seen. But
Yeah. I think it's I would say a human condition, or at least what I've seen is the idea that, well, this is going to be my life and I'm constrained to this, or, okay, I'm a teacher or I'm a doctor and I'm going to, I'm comfortable, the comfortability thing. And maybe we learn that, from other people or our childhood or whatever. It's just live comfortably, and it's like I don't think, and what we've talked about here and getting together, is be transformed. It's like, well, no, I mean, we've got much more potential and possibilities than we give ourselves credit for, That's my thoughts on it. And I've had that's been a pretty eye-opening experience for me. Now you might have to start smaller, but if the dream within you is like, man, I could do something big, like bigger than this, like, then do it. Like, this life is pass by quick, and go big, go big or go home, right? Yeah. I mean, there's so much transformation that can help. You look at where, the area in Northwest Ohio where we're at. It's like, man, just think about if you did that mindset of go big, go home, how much transformation you could leave for other people, So,
yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's the world to dictate, I guess, how you view yourself or how you view your dreams or what you can and
can't do. Yeah.
We give it
self-limiting perceptions or self-limiting thoughts about things.
Yeah, we give it so much power to just dictate all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was even thinking, because you could even have the mindset, right, of how much is too much, or is there a level of success that's too much, or is there a level of influence that's just pride and arrogance and sin and this kind of cow patties kind of thinking. And or even like, you think about this woman, the woman in the oil and the jars and stuff, and it's like, what if your perception was like, well, I don't know how extravagant God is, like maybe I do have these jars, but I'm not going to fill them up because I don't need that much, or this and that, you know what I mean? Like that concept of like, I don't know. You feel like you can't have anything good, or like to have stuff or to have abundance is like evil, right? But you look at Jesus turning water into wine, right? The first thing that displayed his glory. And the guy was like, dude, this is like choice. This wine is choice. After everybody's already drunk, you bring out this choice wine. He didn't, it's like that olive oil would have been like the jam. That would have been like the premium olive oil. Like when he had the fed the 5,000 and the 4,000, there was like a ton. There was way more than they started with left over. In the sense that God's not freaking stingy. The God who created all things, is not stingy. But there can be like these concepts, right? And this is this whole identity crisis is what kind of makes us think that like we would take ourselves out of the equation, like we don't matter, there's a problem, but somebody else will do it, or it's just that's not for me, or I couldn't do that, or I don't got this value. I was sitting in the hot tub today, and I was looking up in the backyard. There's like these, this mature maple trees, and they're big, and they're the big old canopy, this kind of roundish thing, like treetop, this big round, like leafy treetop. And like it's big. But it's like, it's the fact that it's big portrays like a certain kind of picture. It's like, it's awe-inspiring, right? Because it's big and because it's full of leaves, because it's mature, because it's something of substance. It's like it displays a piece of who God is. It's like if you had that compared to like a little tiny withered, stick sticking in the ground that didn't have any leaves, was dying and didn't think it was worth anything. It's like, well, what do you want to look at? You want to look at the tree that's freaking glorious.
Yeah.
It's like we're supposed to be the big tree. We're not supposed to be the piddly little stick. And whenever we kind of get into these things, we're like, well, God just uses you, in spite of you. It's your big hot mess, but that's all he's got to work with. This kind of concept. And I was just thinking about the word demeaning, right? The fact that is demeaning, and I was like, what is demeaning, anyways? And so, demeaning is damaging or lowering the character, states, or reputation of something or someone. Damaging or lowering the character, status, or reputation. Like, that's what that's doing. Like, these concepts that we're no good or we're not that like that, it's like, oh, well, you're just all that God has to work with. No, look, God didn't make crap. So you better check your freaking self.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like if we can grab hold of who we're actually created to be, we could actually be who we're created to be. I was listening to this podcast, and he was talking about being an apostolic people. Apostolic, coming from the word apostle. An apostle being a governmental term, right? Like Jesus used this to describe the disciples. And it was a word invented, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was invented by the Greeks, but then the Romans adopted it and used it. And the apostle was the sent out. They were sent out ones or something like that. And essentially the whole purpose of an apostle, and we're talking about the governmental term here, in which I think Jesus as well meant it, that you would be sent. This is the definition. You were sent from one place to go to another place to make this new place exactly like your old place. And you couldn't leave. Your job wasn't done until it was totally transformed into the place you just came from. So to sum up, right, it's about transforming society, right? So essentially it's like an ambassador, right? An ambassador gets sent from their country of origin to a foreign country where then they represent their country of origin in the foreign country. But an apostle would go, so in the Roman military, the Roman Empire, their way of conquering nations changed from just killing people off or making them slaves to they would come take over the land, leave the people there. But then the goal was to make them like Rome. But the problem was that they would conquer these nations, and then as time went by, the nations would continue to look like what they did before they got conquered, right? So they weren't turning into Rome. So they're like, okay, well, let's do this. Let's send the military, but with the military, let's send these apostles. So these were government officials, or they were officials of some kind, who then got turned into apostles, who their job was to transform society. So you would have the military, you'd have these apostles, then you'd have architects, you'd have musicians, you'd have, clothing people, food, everything, right? We want these people to look like their houses to look like Rome. We want their clothes to look like Rome, their money, the way they talk, everything they do to look like Rome. And so this is what they did. They would colonize these places. Well, that is the mission. That has always been the purpose of man on earth. That God gave mankind authority. Mankind gave authority over to Satan. Jesus came to regain authority for mankind, which is why he came as a man. So now we are now in a place of authority because of Jesus. And the whole point is still to cause this world to look like the kingdom of heaven. And if we take ourselves out of the equation, we forfeit our duties and responsibilities, which means that I don't know, but you can't forfeit your duties and responsibilities. We can't continue to have this thing called humility that's really identity crisis. Like, we can't keep cutting our feet out from underneath us thinking that we're nothing, we're no good. I heard this song the other day, and it was it's not about me, it's all about you. And, it's not about me, but it's all about God kind of concept. And I was like, yeah, really? Why did Jesus come to earth then, if it's not about you? He sure as crap didn't need to come for himself. He came for us. Like, we have to stop taking ourselves out of the equation when we are the equation. The whole point God created the world and mankind was to function on earth. You cannot take yourself out of the equation. But you got to understand that you're like a big freaking part of the equation.
Yeah, it doesn't work unless you're in the equation. The numbers don't add up right. Yeah.
A squared plus B squared equals pi or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Anybody want to expand on that? Interesting, or you don't have to, but you could.
No, that's a major belief. You always talk about less of me, the less of me thing too. Less of me, more of you. And then this is pretty much the same thing as it's not about me, it's all about you or something, whatever that was. But yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't take faith to say that kind of stuff. It doesn't take any faith to say that kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't take faith to just degrade yourself to, basically nothing. It doesn't take faith to say, oh my gosh, I'm a mess, and just kind of stay in that, because it's easy to say that. It's extremely easy to just live that way. Like, that's an easy, not, no risk, no discipline, no responsibility, no accountability way to live. It's just to say, well, I'm just so screwed up, whatever. I don't know, just thank goodness I don't have to be perfect or whatever. Just kind of some of that stuff where it's like, thank goodness I don't have to try to be perfect or
I'm just human.
Yeah, that stuff. Yeah, I mean, because we're not gonna be perfect, but just kind of that mentality where it's like, I'm just so messed up, whatever. Might as well just live with it. Yeah, it's not hard to live. It's easy way to live. It doesn't take a lot of faith, and I think you just get steamrolled by the world at some point. You eventually do just get steamrolled, or you end up down current in a swamp or something.
Mm-hmm.
Without your pants or something.
Oh my gosh. An alligator chomping.
And you're like, how the heck did I get here?
Chomping at the bit. Right.
And you're like, well, because the paddle and boat that you had,
you jumped off and back up.
Or the paddle and boat someone was trying to give you, you're like, no thanks.
Yeah, tell that story.
Oh, the story?
The flood story?
Oh, it was about a gentleman on his roof, and there was a big flood, and he's sitting there, and he's praying. He's like, God, help me. This is ridiculous. What the freak's going on? So, a helicopter flies by, and they're like, yeah, hop on in, or puts on a ladder or rope or whatever. He's like, no, I've been praying. God's gonna end this. He's gonna rescue me. They're like, all right, whatever. And then like a boat rides by. They're like, dude, come on, hop on in. He's like, no, I've been praying. God's got me. Don't worry about it. And then something else, I don't know, comes by. And anyways,
hot air balloon.
The hot air balloon, yeah. So the guy passes away because it doesn't stop. He's like, he's been praying. He thought God's gonna just stop this match, stop the flood, and everything's gonna be all right. So he goes to heaven or wherever, and he's talking to God. God's like, man, it's like, you should still be alive. He's like, dude, I've been praying. Why didn't you save me? He's like, I sent, a hot air balloon, a freaking plane, and a boat. He's like, come on. So yeah, it's just a story about you pray, and then we were talking about it cutting down oh man, I had an idea. You pray, you get an idea. You pray, or a person comes into your life. You pray, and something opens, and
You're like, no,
no, heck no, because that's not how it's supposed to look, right? You know, or at least that's what my mind will tell me. Like, oh no, it can't be that.
Right, it's like, no, that's different.
Yeah.
That's different than anything I've
Yeah.
ever done before.
And
in
I
my
think
life.
that's stepping totally what these stories talk about, stepping into that faith. Like all three of those were like kind of like the people had to be like, what, you know, do that. All right. And the thing is with the woman, like, I mean, she was so close to death. It sounded like she was like, okay, you know, I'll take this one last chance to see what happens here, because other than that, you know, I might as well, you know, go. So, yeah, but definitely being a part of that equation, yeah, I like that. If everyone knew or reframed their thoughts to know that they're part of the bigger equation, man, that could make a huge impact on, you know, things, and, you know, the arguing and the thinking, you know, one way is better than the other, and judgments and all that. That would make a huge contribution to building the kingdom on earth, where it's always supposed to be.
Yeah.
But we've gotten lost in the lies and all that stuff.
Yeah, because everything flows from your identity and your position, right? And we act like we don't matter, but we're adopted into as sons into an actual family that's actually legit. Yeah. So maybe the question, right, to end with is like, let's just say, right, if there was no hindrances, if there was no limitations, money didn't matter, wasn't a factor, time, energy, creativity, there was no limitations. Like if you had access to anything and everything, right, just it doesn't even matter. Like what, if you closed your eyes and you just thought about it, there was not, you could do anything, whatever you could dream, you could do it. What would you do? Because if you have an idea, my good peoples, that is something you should be getting into. The very thing that you long to get into, but you just, but it's not possible. I don't know how to do it. I don't understand where's the platform, where's the people, what am I supposed to do? I don't get it. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to do it. But if you can grab hold of the fact that idea, these ideas, whatever it is that comes to your mind when you think about, with no limitations, with no concept of shortages, if there were no shortages in life, what would you do? And those are the things you should start spending some time working out, because those are the things you're called to do. Those are the things that are wrapped up in your potential and your purpose and your vision. These things, what would you do if money wasn't an issue? Where would you go? What would you build? What would you do? And then go and freaking do it. Because why not? If not you, then freaking who? Go get you some freaking jars and fill that junk up to overflowing.
Right.
And don't just go get a few either. Get as many as you can humanly possibly gather. In Jesus' name, my good peoples. Until next time. Peace!